Hi, welcome to the webinar today. My name is Alexandra Alvarado. I'm the Director of Marketing and Education here at the American Apartment Owners Association. And today we have with us a couple of team members from Inago to talk to us about collecting rent and increasing revenue. Two things that we're always trying to do as landlords, right? But using tech to do these things more efficiently and encourage those timely payments, especially if you've ever had trouble with tenants paying rent. This is definitely a great tool for you to use, and they're going to talk to you a lot more about it. But before we begin, I just want to start with a couple of things, couple of reminders. We are recording this whole thing, so we'll send you the full recording about 24 hours from now with also the follow-up info for the speakers here if you did want to connect with them after the webinar. And we'll also send you the slides as well. So if you miss anything, don't worry. You'll get it tomorrow. And what we're going to do today is go through a presentation with a couple of poll questions mixed in. Then we'll finish off with a Q&A session with Dave and Tanvir. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dave and Tanvir. Let's go to the next slide. There we go. So Dave has been working in real estate tech since 2013. Wow, 10 years. He is the CEO and co-founder of Inago. And while he may not be good at either, he loves pickup basketball and playing a round of golf, which is fun. So he is also a real estate investor himself. So that's exciting as well. You have a landlord creating a product for landlords. And Tanvir Satar, he joined Inago 6 years ago, and he helps with working on business development, marketing, and strategic partnerships. Outside of Inago, Tanvir loves kicking the soccer ball around, and he also is a real estate investor. So with 8+ years of experience in the real estate industry. So what they're doing is really interesting. I mean, if you haven't heard from them before, we've talked about Inago probably several times, but they're doing a lot really to make your life easier. So I'm really excited that we have both of you on today to talk to us about what you have, to help landlords. And so I'll move it over to you to get started, and I'll come back later for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexandra, for a great intro. And yeah, thank you everybody for being here today. We're going to cover primarily 5 different topics as they relate to increasing revenue on your rental properties. The first one being cash flow, right? Unless you're sitting on an appreciating gold mine, cash flow is probably why you got into the business. So it's a really critical one. Different ways to actually increase the revenue directly. Online rent collection versus offline collection and how that can impact the revenue that you're earning on these properties and how you can simplify that in a lot of different ways. We'll talk about what to look for in software to help you facilitate and manage a lot of these different processes. And then of course, we got to spend at least a little bit of time talking about how Inago can help. But I promise we'll have lots of good info in this presentation outside of just Inago, but we will weave in throughout different ways that Inago can service those needs that we're talking about here. So without further ado, I'm going to hand off cash flow to Tanvir.
All right, thanks, Dave. And one other thing to add, just kind of on our presentation today, we're going to use some personal stories as investors because we are investors like you, also, and some stories from our clients as well. So definitely, this isn't solicited advice or anything. This is just from our experience from one landlord or one property manager to another. All right, so first thing we want to talk about is cash flow, and let's define it. What is cash flow, right? Cash flow is income minus expenses. A lot of you probably know what that is, but that's something that you want to think of when you're investing in new property. What is your cash flow on this? And some things that you want to do is when you're considering what the rental rate will be, right? What will your cash flow be based on different rental rates? And that might help you determine what your rent is, and then also when you're marketing to tenants, right? What rental amount do you want? What credit score do you expect these tenants to have? So just some things about cash flow, but overall, it's just going to show you the health of the business, right? We always want it to be positive when you take your income and minus your expenses. Some properties, their cash flow might be zero and you're just trying to have it as a buy and hold. And then other ones you might, make $500 to $1,000 or $2,000 off of. So just food for thought there. So how to maximize cash flow? The first thing is always the step after you get the property or when a turn is coming over is finding good tenants, right? And how do you find good tenants? You can have 100 different prospective tenants go through a property. You can have some really good feelings about people, but it's always good to verify a third party. or do a third-party verification. So using tools where you can do a background check, a credit check, you can verify income, and then last but not least, a reference check, right? The reference check, obviously, that's going to be something that the prospective tenant's going to give you, but the background check, credit check, and verification of income, those are all going to be ways that you are able to get a third party to verify, is the tenant, if they say, hey, I make $5,000 a month, let's verify that, right? That there's a way to do that. And I always do that with my prospective tenants. I know Dave does it as well. And whenever new landlords come on the software, I always recommend taking advantage of our background checks in Inago. So yeah, I think we're going to check in for the first poll question.
All right, I just launched the poll question. So we have a few options here. So I think this might be a multiple choice one. So you can only pick one choice on this one. But let's pick the one that you do no matter what. I think that might be a better way to put this one. Sorry, Tanvir, I didn't realize this was a pick all that apply question, but we'll get at least a sense of which one is most important to you all.
No problem.
All right, so we got majority of you participated, so we'll take a look at the results. There we go.
All right.
Credit check
Awesome.
seems to be number one from what I hear as far as what people usually look at for these things. So that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But yeah, the background check and also the income verification is also a great tool to have as well. So that's good. That's good to see a lot of you guys are using that. For those who aren't using those tools are available. And Dave's going to take a little deeper dive into that later. Some other things to think about with cash flow is how to minimize the risk and loss of cash flow. So I'm going to run through these points really quickly. First of all, rent loss insurance, right? What is rent loss insurance? So this is to cover the unimaginable, right? Like a tree falling on your house. So something that's totally out of your control. So our rule of thumb is to check with either your insurance agent or go out online and try to find some rent loss insurance online. There's a lot of tools out there if you just simply Google it. Another thing I want to add here is to check your current policy, right? I personally, as a landlord myself, I just went through something with a sewage backup at one of my properties. And luckily my policy covered the sewer scope, and it would have been a couple $1,000s out of pocket, but the insurance was able to cover it. So make sure that depending on where you live, you have the right insurance, whether it's, flood insurance, hurricane insurance, just make sure all those are covered, because just because you have like when you're shopping around for insurance, just because someone's the lowest amount doesn't mean that it's the best, right? So I definitely am happy that I went through that policy for this property that I took on that was in a flood zone. Okay, so the other thing is rent default insurance. So what is this? So rent default insurance is something that you can definitely shop around online. Basically what it is if your tenant doesn't pay rent, in some policies, you can file a claim within 5 days. So today being October 3rd, you could file that by then if a tenant hasn't paid. The nice thing is that this will cover your rent, because instead of this being a positive cash flowing property, it's going to be negative real quick if the tenant stops paying, right? Eviction process takes a couple of months. So this kind of covers the gap of you not being able to get paid. Most policies usually last up to 6 months, but check your policy, shop around, and see which you find. Each one is different. So the ones that we found were about 6 months, but it really depends on your insurance policy there. So safety net and emergency fund. So safety net. So we talk to investors all the time. Rule of thumb here is about 3 months. So if your rental amount is $2,000, you want to have $6,000 cash on hand to just cover the what ifs, right? If something happens to one of your properties, you have money set aside to cover those costs. And then Dave's going to talk about incentivizing tenants.
Yeah, and Tanvir mentioned it a little bit. with screening tenants. I mean, it's so important to find good tenants, right? And screening is a really great tool to help you do that. And if you're not already using it, you definitely should. But once you do find those great tenants, how do you keep them? A good tenant is, I always like to say they're worth their weight in gold, right? Somebody that's going to pay on time, take care of your property. That's not going to be a huge hassle for you. So how do you keep them in there? There's a few different things that I've learned from landlords through the years that we employ at my rental properties. One is when a tenant first moves into the property, we always give them a little gift basket that has cleaning supplies in it. I know this seems really dumb. It's probably the lamest gift basket they'll ever receive, but it does show that you care. It is a gift, right? I mean, people like getting gifts no matter what it is, even if it's a gallon of Dawn soap, right? But they like getting that gift. It shows you care about the property. And we always emphasize to them as part of that gift, we say, hey, we really care about these properties, right? They matter to us. We're going to treat them really well. You're going to love living here. And we only ask the same of you, right? And we find that people do take better care because of that, right? They clean it. They use those supplies, right? And if somebody ever reached out to us and said, hey, I ran out of supplies, we'd go down and buy them more, right? Because we want them to take care of that property. Very low cost, makes a big difference in their usage and their happiness in the unit. And the second thing is we try to find some holiday or event and make it a way to give them a little gift card, a little something back. So we'll do like Christmas or their birthday if we happen to keep track of that. We'll give them a little gift card to like a local restaurant or to a local retail shop. Again, it shows that we care about the community. We're kind of shopping local. It shows that we care about them. It's a very, very small expense in comparison to the total amount of money that they're bringing in for you. And it makes them so happy. We get thank you notes that are just really wonderful back from tenants. And they say, oh man, you guys really care as landlords. You're such great landlords. We've never gotten this kind of thing, whatever it is, right? But it makes a big difference. And if they're good tenants, it's going to help them to stick around. And that is, for $25 for a gift card, $50 for a gift card and some cleaning supplies, that is an incredibly great return on investment. If you can keep them in your property and keep them paying rent in the long haul. So find little ways, it doesn't have to be those, but find little ways to create incentives for those great tenants to stick around. And it's going to make a big difference on your overall cash flow. Okay, next up, we are going to talk about increasing revenue. You want to flip slides there, Tom? Here?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, cool. So there's really four main kind of quadrants here, components to increasing revenue on these rental properties. You can increase revenue, of course, by increasing rent price, right? It's kind of the no-brainer, the most obvious version of this. You can increase your revenue by adding new amenities that you can, potentially charge for, or charge again more in rent, or attract better renters. You can increase revenue by charging additional fees. There's a variety of different fees that you can potentially charge. And then the final one is a little bit of a cheat here. Technically you're increasing your profit when you lower your costs, not your revenue, but I think it's spiritually on the same level, right? Lowering your costs is going to make your properties more profitable, which is what you're going after with increasing this revenue. So let's start. We're going to talk about increasing the rent price first. So the path to increasing rent price is not as simple as, hey, I feel like it should be higher, I'm going to raise it, right? The market may reject that. And you want to be really aware of what the market can and cannot accept. Okay, so just because there's a property on your street that's renting for $200 more, you need to make sure that you're evaluating, is there a major difference between your two properties? Is that why it's renting for $200 more? Or are you simply under what the market should be? So first evaluate your rental market, go on Zillow, right? Go on apartments.com, go on these online platforms and see what other people are charging. The only thing to keep in mind here is that just because it's listed for a price doesn't mean it rented for that price. So it's possible that the actual rental prices are a little bit lower than what's reported there. But it gives you a great idea of generally what people are asking for and what people are demanding. Another thing that you can do, and I do want to caution a little bit, there are laws around collusion with rental prices. So we're certainly not giving advice to go, poll a bunch of landlords and align your rental prices with one another. But, if you're in a local apartment association, or, you have some friends that are landlords, or you're working on your property and you see a landlord down the street, you can certainly talk to them and find out, hey, what are you guys typically seeing in the market right now? Are you having trouble renting properties at certain prices? You can absolutely ask those types of questions. You just want to be cautious kind of how far you go with that. But there's a lot of different ways you can evaluate the market. Next up is improving existing property, right? You can make some subtle tweaks and changes to your property to really make a big difference in how renters perceive those properties, right? It can be as simple as ripping up some carpet or putting a new paint job on, right? It can be a little bit more elaborate, like, hey, I'm in a Class A area. Everybody wants to have a washer dryer and I don't have them in my unit, right? Investing, $500 to $1,000 in washer dryer may allow you to charge another $100 to $200 in rent a month, which is well worth the investment, right? If you're going to get a return that quickly. So identify some places where you can improve your property, and therefore you can increase that rental price. Next up is implementing high-tech features. Again, it depends on your market and it depends on who you're renting to and what they're interested in. But some people may really care about having Google Nest, right? Or they may care about having, a keypad lock or a thumbprint lock or something they can control from their phone, right? And again, it'll allow you to attract more tenants and potentially increase your rental price. And then finally, invest in green technology. This helps you in a lot of different ways. This can lower utility bills. This makes people feel like they're making a difference on their carbon footprint, which really matters again in some markets, and some types of renters really do care about that type of thing. So, you can invest in solar panels. That would be kind of the most extreme version of this, but you can also do little things like getting new windows or putting in some new insulation, just finding ways to reduce the carbon footprint and advertising and marketing that as a green technology investment. So again, the first thing you want to do is evaluate the market, and that allows you to target these other items that you can use to increase your rental price. Next up, after increasing rental price, is charging additional fees. So most landlords use late payment fees. If you're not already doing it, you certainly should be, but most landlords use late payment fees as an enforcement technique rather than an actual revenue generator. You certainly don't want to make it a revenue generator, but if you're using it just to make sure that your rent is paid on time, you also want to make sure that you're actually collecting those late fees. Because if you don't, it undercuts the enforcement of the rent payment. And it also costs you potential revenue. I mean, there's a reason you have those late fees in place. We'll talk more about late fees a little bit later, but enforcing late fees is certainly an important first step when you're talking about fees outside of rent. Next up is pet fees and rent. If you're renting to pets, you can definitely charge some extra money. But I'm going to sit back and let the reformed pet hater Tom Veer here talk about some of his experience with charging for pet fees.
Easy, Dave. People are going to leave the webinar. I think I'm part of animal abuse or something. But no, I'm not a pet lover myself. I inherited 2 from my marriage. So now I'm a dog dad and proud dog dad. So people do come around. But with pet fees, when I turned one property, actually my old primary home, into a rental, I said absolutely no pets. I wanted nothing to do with them, but I found out that I wasn't able to rent, right? So I did some research, and it turns out about 70% of renters these days have a pet. So I was only opening up myself to 30% of the market. The nice thing about renting to tenants with pet, number one, like Dave said, is you can charge a fee. So I charge $100 per pet. So that's $200 extra a month. Hopefully they're not messing up the property that much. But the other thing is that you find with renters with pets, they're more responsible, right? They have something to come home to. They have something to check in on. They're going to treat your property more as their home than just a rental unit, because their animal lives there 24/7 when they're not there. So definitely keep that in mind when you're renting to people, and open up things to pets.
Yeah, I think that's the key point, Tom, here, is that you created contingencies for yourself, right? So like a pet deposit to protect if they do some damage, and that pet fee, of course, is additional income. So you just want to make sure you're accounting for the damage they could potentially do, and as long as you financially account for that, it's something that can really be a boon for you, both in the renters that you're attracting, because so many have pets, and in the fees that you're collecting. Next up, though, is applicant fees. Time is money, right? So if you're spending time calling references, evaluating their application, you can charge for that time, right? Now, there are some states that have some rules around this, so be sure to check your locality. But generally, it's very common to charge an additional fee for that application submission itself, whatever you think is a reasonable rate for a half hour, 1 hour of your time to follow up on that information. Next is lease termination fees. This is something that you should likely have a clause in your lease agreement dictating how this is handled. Most people will have some equation associated with the rental price determines the lease termination fee. Again, this is about enforcement more than anything. If you're not already enforcing it, you really should. I mean, they agreed to a contract. They said that there would be a cost to moving on, to breaking it early. And if they do indeed break it early, you have a right to charge those termination fees. Next is extra occupant fees. Again, this is commonly handled in the contract itself. But if you agreed to have one person rent the one bedroom and a second person moves in, that means more wear and tear. That means more risk, right? More people that are going to be operating the gas stove, right? More people that are going to be coming and going outside the doors, using all the amenities within the apartment. It's going to lower the life of all those different features within the apartment. It's not inappropriate to charge an extra occupant fee in those situations. That's why people do that, right? You don't want to be egregious with it, but you can charge a little bit more, and it can help offset some of those future expenses and also earn a little bit more revenue on on the front side of it. And then finally, landscaping fees. Again, this is commonly spread out among multiple tenants. If it's a single family home, you may say, hey, you guys can mow the lawn yourselves, or I can bring in a service and I'll charge you a landscaping fee for that. If it's an apartment building, if it's a duplex or a quadplex or whatever it may be, you can charge a small nominal fee to each individual tenant to help cover the costs of maintaining the property and the landscaping all around it. So again, not an inappropriate thing to ask for. And also a lot of these fees, you certainly want to make sure that tenants are very clear on these fees ahead of time, but in that listed price on Zillow, these fees aren't going to be there, right? So you may be able to attract tenants at a certain rate, and then you say, hey, if you're going to do this, this, or this, there's going to be some extra charges for those things. And tenants are totally amenable to that as long as you're clearly stating those before they're signing anything or officially agreeing to rent that property. But it can put you in a better position from a marketing standpoint, which can be useful. All right, next up is adding amenities. There's a lot of different amenities you can add to your property that can bring some value. But again, I'm going to kick it over to Tom here first, because I know he has some firsthand experience with cleaning services specifically.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Dave. So my wife, she owns a property management company. And so one thing that we do with her company is we offer cleaning services. So the property gets cleaned beforehand. When someone walks in, it's like, oh, wow, this place is spotless. What I do is I say, oh, I can introduce you to our cleaning team. And they can, what it does, it opens up the opportunity for our cleaning person to come in, or cleaning team to come in and clean the property, whether it's weekly, monthly, or even at the end of the lease, right? Because we're already going to pay that person to clean when the turn happens. So that way we can manage who's cleaning the property, and we know it's going to be cleaned the right way. And they can we know that, for deep cleaning, one of our team members, her name is Amelia. I know she knows how to clean the coils. She's familiar with the property. She knows what we like clean, what helps sell the property for the next tenant, and things like that. So definitely take advantage of offering a cleaning service, and think of your properties, everyone in your book of business as a team, and referring them to your tenants never hurts.
Yeah, totally. It really goes kind of hand in hand with handing them that gift basket of cleaning supplies, right? You're taking a little more control over the situation, and you know that it's going to be treated right. You know that it's going to be kept up well, so that when you do go to turn the unit, it's still in great shape, and it actually extends the capex on a lot of those different amenities within your property and the appliances and everything. So it's a wonderful way to earn a little bit of extra money and also extend the life of your property. Next up is storage space. You could have some storage space in the basement, in the attic. You can rent that out. You might have to build a little bit around that, put some locks on it so that they feel like they're getting their bang for their buck. But those are pretty minor investments to add additional revenue for your rental property. You can even rent that storage space potentially out to others. Like if you have a single family home with a garage and the residents aren't using it, you could rent out that garage space, or maybe you offer it to the residents first, but if they but then you can offer it to others as well. So there's lots of different ways to utilize storage space. Satellite TV, not as common these days, right? Usually this is internet these days, but internet, satellite TV, whatever it may be, offering that for your whole building. Oftentimes you can negotiate a better rent or a better rate if it is multi-unit. But then you can charge closer to a market rate, or even a slightly less discounted rate to the actual tenants, that you're making a little bit on top of that. It can be a great way to go. It's a win-win for everybody, right? Laundry services, whether it's coin operated, whether you have somebody come to their door and pick up their laundry, obviously what you're going to charge is going to be different depending, but there are services out there that you can connect with. It doesn't have to be you, or your brother or somebody coming by and picking up the laundry. You can hire a service to do that, and you can charge the tenants for access to that. And it feels like a nice amenity for them. And then finally, vending machines, you can stick them in your basement, stick them in your whatever area. And it's an easy way to make a little bit of extra money there. And finally, the black sheep child here of the group, lowering costs, not technically raising revenue here, but it does make a big difference on your profitability. And the first place you can lower is utility costs. We talked a little bit about making your property more green, especially if you're taking on the utility costs. This is a great investment, both from a marketing standpoint and from your actual bottom line. But investing in appliances that are energy efficient, insulating your windows, changing your air filters regularly to extend the life of your HVAC system, changing light bulbs to LED light bulbs or even smart light bulbs in some cases, lowering your water heater settings, doesn't need to go up to scalding, right? And using a water heater blanket to better insulate it so that the water heater has to do less work to keep the water warm. You can also choose to, if you find that, hey, I've gotten really efficient, and instead of my market where most people are paying 150 for a one bed for utilities, my tenants are only paying 75. On the next lease, you could say, hey, tenants, I'm going to take on this charge and you're going to pay me a flat monthly fee of 120 bucks, right? Well, they just got a $30 discount on what the market's charging, and which is great for them, but you're making, $40, $50 profit on that. So if you do find that you make a big difference in those utility costs, that can be a great opportunity for you to take those charges on as a part of a lease agreement and make some additional money and bring a lot of value to your tenants. And then the second category here is financial expenses. Definitely take advantage of all tax breaks. This can be and certainly is a webinar all to itself, right? There's lots of different tax breaks that you can use. If you don't have a good CPA, we could not recommend it enough. I know AAOA also has a lot of great resources on this. So certainly invest some time in learning about tax breaks that are available to you, especially if you're remodeling the property in any way, shape, or form. There's a lot more there in those situations. Next up is challenging your property tax assessment. Now, this only works if there's a challenge to be had, but just because you get a piece of paper in the mail that says your property's worth X hundreds of thousands of dollars doesn't mean you have to accept that and start paying the taxes. You can push back on that. It's going to be reviewed. People win these all the time, but you have to kind of have a leg to stand on, right? So if you believe that that number is off, if you think that it should be lower, do some homework and you can submit an appeal to the county to lower that tax bill. Which can be a difference of thousands of dollars to you, which is very meaningful and well worth the time. And then finally, refinance when appropriate. I'll tell you, this is not the appropriate time right now, right? Interest rates are sky high, but they ultimately come in waves, right? They're going to go back down. They were at their bottom a couple of years ago. Hopefully, many of you took advantage of it. They're going to go back down again within a few years, I'm sure. So it comes in waves. The next wave, make sure that you're refinancing. Don't be afraid to still purchase properties right now, because you can refinance in the future and get those lower rates. Just make sure you can cash flow it in the meantime. So prepare yourself for refinances when the time does come.
Awesome. All right, I think Dave might be having some audio issues. What we'll do next is we'll talk about rent collection. So with rent collection, we're going to start off with first a poll question. And Alexandra will take that.
Yep, just launched it. What is your primary rent collection method? So property management software, cash check, PayPal, Zelle, Venmo. I know there were some talks about Zelle and Venmo being kind of restricted, right? For landlords and for tax purposes as well, which I thought was interesting. I don't think it went through, but there's definitely some efforts being made to kind of restrict the, businesses using Zelle and Venmo without, paying a little more or tax, kind of tracking and whatnot. So this is interesting. Okay, let me go ahead and wait for a few more of you to come in and vote. All right, looks like we have over half here that have voted. So let me go ahead and show the results. There you go.
Okay. All right. So it looks like the majority of you, about 42%, are using PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, which, they're great features. Dave's going to take a deeper dive. As Alexandra said, though, they are kind of clamping down for tax reasons, and um, definitely might change the reporting here on that. So I'll let Dave cover that topic. But yeah, this is good to know. Thank you.
Sure.
So speaking of online versus offline rent collections, bottom line, it seems like a lot of people are using online rent collections. But we're going to talk about online and offline and the pros and cons of each. All right. So, all right. So offline rental collections, let's just start out with there. These are kind of the old school methods of rent collection, right? First off, cash is king, right? Cash is always king, but I don't know if it always is in real estate. When it comes to rent collections, we'll take a deeper dive in that. Other ways that tenants can pay: personal check, certified check. But what that leads to, honestly, is on-site labor, right? And with on-site labor, that comes as a cost for you. Someone has to be there to receive it, or if people send things in the mail, you have to have a drop box, or someone has to open it, keep track of it, record it. Nowadays, things get stolen out of the mail all the time. The time value of money of a tenant buying checks, buying a stamp, sending it in, right? That cost, it's expensive. And now people post COVID want to do everything from their phone, right? It's not just paying rent online. It's doing anything. Like I did my eye exam from my phone a couple weeks ago. So we definitely are moving to doing a lot more things as Americans electronically. And I think rent collection is a big one. So just the cost of the offline rent collection, I think time-wise costs a lot more than online. And with online rent collection payments, what you can do is there's multiple payment types with software. So you can do an internal bank transfer, you can do credit or debit card, ACH, and also electronic funds transfers. Now with Inago, what we usually see is about 40% pay online at the beginning. But then by the time a person is ramped up on the software, 80% of their tenants pay online. And there's always going to be elderly tenants, some tenants that just pay everything in cash. And for those tenants, they can still pay that way, either by mailing in the check or stopping by your office. But the nice thing is 80% of the time, you don't have to worry about a thing. The system marks the payment as recorded, and you receive the money in your bank account a few days later. So there are other ways, which I think a lot of you guys use now, and Dave's going to kind of talk a little bit about other collection methods with online payments.
Yeah, and just to add really quickly, we do get that feedback sometimes, like, oh, my tenants won't use online payments, like they're elderly or whatever. And we actually just did it. We do case studies, and we just did one with a great landlord out in Philadelphia that manages a bunch of senior living facilities, and they could not believe how effective it was. They have 85% of their tenants are paying online in this senior living facility, because ultimately, convenience is not ageist, right? People want an easy way to do things, and they'll figure it out if it's a heck of a lot easier. So I think you'd be surprised if you're one of those people that's wavering because you're not sure if your tenants would do it. I certainly think it's worth giving it a shot. But yeah, to speak more specifically, and Alexandra mentioned it, and she's exactly right. PayPal, Zelle, Apple Pay less so with rent, but certainly exists, and then Venmo are commonly used. We saw the plurality of people on this webinar using one of those methods to collect rent. Those platforms don't really want you to use them to collect rent, right? Because they want to take their cut. If they detect that you are a landlord collecting rent, there certainly have been instances of them clamping down and trying to retroactively charge, or trying to change your status, or trying to start charging you moving forward. And all of a sudden, your payment method has been zapped out from under you, without a lot of pretense to it. There's also tax implications, right? They want to register you as a business if you start collecting, and suddenly they're going to start taking tax off of that, or report things in different ways for you as a business that may be unique to you as a rental property or an investment property, right? That aren't totally the way that you want to be reported. So there's a lot of drawbacks. They themselves, it's against their terms to be an individual collecting rent through these platforms. So it's something to be aware of. That being said, a lot of people use these, And if it works for you, that's terrific. You want to find something that works for you. Just be aware of the risks of using those platforms and some of the drawbacks there. But the other one is, of course, rent collection software. And there's a lot of different options out there for rent collection software, and it's a little bit more specifically designed for handling this type of situation than something like a PayPal or a Zelle or a Venmo. There's a lot of benefits to it. So I'll let Tanvir talk a little bit about those benefits.
Yeah, for sure. And with the other payment methods, right? The question I always ask to prospective landlords or current landlords, I say, how do you manage your business, right? Okay, you can collect rent, but then how do you manage it? And the nice thing about these softwares out, Anago being one of them, obviously is the one we're going to talk about, but there's other ones that are out there that might fit your business better, and that's totally fine. But they give you a way to manage your business, right? They're going to create automatic invoices. There's going to be a support team for your tenants when they need help paying online. You can do reporting, your profit and loss, right? With Venmo or Zelle, I don't think they're going to give you a report of a profit and loss. You're just going to see the income. You might have to put that in Excel. You might have to send that on to your CPA. The nice thing is you can add users where you can have your CPA have access to the online software, and they're able to do financial reporting right then and there. So I think it speeds up the transaction time, and then it also speeds up your time of managing the business, because you don't want to wait till year end to see if you're at a profit or loss, or you want to put stuff in Excel each month, right? That can get really time consuming. So take advantage of some software that's out there. Obviously, Anago being one of them. I'm going to kick it over to Dave, and he's going to talk a little bit more about what to look for in an online software.
Yeah, and if it's not already clear, why are we talking about rental management software as it relates to increasing revenue? Because it's all about efficiency. This is software that's designed to work with you and increase the efficiency on your properties, which is going to allow you to increase your rent, to lower your expenses. It's going to allow you to focus more time on investing in the right properties or finding the right tenants, which again will result in more revenue. A big company doesn't start using Microsoft tools because they can suddenly start selling them, right? They use them because they increase their efficiency. So it's the same idea, right? You want good software that's tailored to you, that's going to increase your efficiency. So what can you look for in rent collection software? Of course, features. You want to make sure that it's got the things that you want to do. You also kind of want to make sure it doesn't have too much that you don't want, or that's going to be a distraction or a waste of time, or that you're paying for, right? That you don't actually need. And that goes into pricing, right? So be aware of the pricing for the software. There's a lot of software, unfortunately, out there that does have hidden fees, that does have fees tied to specific features. You think you're getting one thing, but you're actually getting something else. So just be aware. I mean, you can get that information out of them. They just might make it a little bit hard. So make sure you're asking those questions. Like, is this all the fees I could potentially pay? Can I get a full list of all the potential fees? And then secondly, speaking of additional fees that you can get charged, payment fees are pretty common. Some can charge as much as 3.5% plus on transactions. Like if PayPal, for example, does register you as a business, they're going to charge a couple percentage points on every transaction that goes through. Those are the types of payment fees we're talking about. So be aware of those more hidden fees that you may end up paying. Delivery time, how quickly are you going to get access to your money, right? Is it going to be next day? Is it going to be a week from now? Is it going to be real-time payments, right? How quickly do you get that? And there may be payment fees associated with the different speeds at which you can access that money. And then finally, reviews. This is one of the best ways to evaluate software. And we have a few preferred review sites that we really recommend. We'll talk more about these in a bit, but G2, Capterra, Trustpilot, those are 3 review platforms that validate the reviews, right? They actually make sure that the people that are reviewing the software are real users of the software, which is critical. It's not like, I'm sure everybody knows about the Amazon fake reviews, right? Where you can they create a bot and they create thousands of reviews on an Amazon product. So a lot of people go to like Fake Spotter or places like that to see how many of these are legitimate. Places like G2, Capterra, and Trustpilot have that sort of Fake Spotter mentality already built in. They're already filtering out those bad reviews. So find good review sites and go and read those reviews. See real people's experiences with using that software. Anyway, we're going to dive into a couple of the different features that you want to be aware of within rental management software and how those can help you in increasing your revenue. And of course, again, we're going to show you from the Inago perspective, but just make sure that whatever software you look at includes these features, and here are the ways that those things can help. So the first one here is the rent payment sequence, right? So allowing your tenants to pay rent online is going to result in more people paying on time. It's going to result in a better experience for your tenants, which can help retain those great tenants. It's a more seamless process. Typically, you're going to get the money faster. You're going to spend less time running checks down to the bank or worrying about tracking these funds. Again, time is money. You will save time when you're using something like this. There's lots of little things that will actually result in overall increased revenue and profitability on your property. So make sure that that rent payment sequence is really seamless. Make sure that it is that kind of Amazon shopping cart easy of them clicking a couple buttons and making a payment. And again, this is kind of how it works within the Inago platform. All right, let's move on to autopay. And you probably saw at the end of that rent payment sequence that Inago is going to prompt the tenant to sign up for autopay after they've submitted that payment. Autopay is just a great feature to have when you're collecting rent, because if all your tenants sign up for autopay, you're going to get that money every single month without a lot of hassle, right? You know it's coming in, you're getting your couple thousand, tens of thousands, whatever amount it may be, is going to be in your bank account just a couple of days after the first of the month as all those payments settle. So making sure that that software offers autopay, again, is going to have a big impact on your revenue, how quickly you're getting access to that revenue, and the speed at which you're able to grow and how efficiently you're able to grow. All right, finally, let's talk late fees. I mentioned this a little bit before, but the biggest challenge with late fees is really enforcement. And if you're not using software, it's nearly impossible to enforce late fees, right? I'm sure this story will resonate with a lot of you. I can't tell you how many landlords I've spoken with that say that their current late fee system is, oh, it's $50 on the 5th of the month. So on the 5th, they call up the tenant if they still haven't paid, and they say, hey, you still owe me, and now you owe me $50 for late fees. And if you don't get it to me tomorrow, I'm going to write up the notice to quit, and we're going to start eviction proceedings. And that always scares the tenant, right? They don't want to get evicted. That's a useful threat. So they go, they cut a check, they drop it off to you or whatever, and inevitably, it doesn't include the late fees, right? They just paid the $1,000 rent, not the $1,050 with the late fees. And you look at that check, and this thought crosses your mind is, okay, I got my $1,000. That's the big amount that I was trying to get after here. Am I really going to go after this $50? How much effort do I want to put into collecting this $50 here? And a lot of landlords make the decision, and I don't blame them. Whatever, I'm just going to ignore this. I'm going to move on. And you've taught your tenant a few things when you do that. One, you've taught them that you're going to call them up and let them know, hey, you still owe me, right? You're going to be their administrative assistant to make sure they get that payment in. Two, you've taught them that you don't actually enforce your late fees, and they don't have to pay them, so they can keep paying late every single month. And finally, you've told them that your threats are really empty, that they're meaningless, right? And all those are bad lessons to teach your tenant. So having a system that's going to enforce late fees for you is going to smooth out your collection process, right? Which again will ultimately increase revenue. And B, it will allow you to collect more late fees, because a system like Inago or any other property management software that's really worth its salt is going to force the tenant to pay the late fee as a part of that rental payment process, right? If you're only accepting rent through something like Inago, then they have to pay that late fee. They have no other option. They can't give you $1,000 instead of $1,050. They're going to give you that full $1,050, or you can delay it to next month if you want, and you can waive it when you need to, right? But having that enforcement is such a powerful tool for you as a landlord and as a rental manager. Anyway, I'm going to hand it off. Now we're going to talk a little more specifically about how Inago itself can help. But again, those last three items are really generally about why you should care and consider rent collection software for yourself. So, Tom,
for sure. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. All right, so let's hop into some Inago features. And these are features that we offer. Obviously, think of these features as you shop around for software. First and foremost, I think we're beating a dead horse now, but rent collection, right? Dave really went into that. Rent collection is definitely something that you want to think about, and it definitely speeds up your process. Next up, tenant screening. So with tenant screening, as I said in the beginning of the presentation, that is how you verify what your tenant is saying is true, right? Use that third-party verification service, whether it's online or offline, and screen your prospective tenants. Every time I talk to a new landlord, I've worked for Inago for 6 years. My rule of thumb to them always is to screen their tenants. That way you verify what they are saying. Next up is lease management. You can take advantage of signing your leases online through Inago. So basically what happen is you can upload a copy of your lease, or we'll have state specific leases there as well in the next couple of months. And basically you fill out lease start date, lease end date, and then the system will automatically fill that out for you, and you can sign it digitally through Inago. Financial reporting, I actually was just on a call with someone who was switching over from accounting software to Inago about an hour before this webinar today. And he said, hey, I saw a review on you guys and it says you guys don't have financial reporting. I was like, well, what exactly are you looking for? He's like, well, I just want to see how much money I made. So with Inago, you can do a profit and loss statement. And when you open up the profit and loss page in Inago, first, it's going to be for all your properties. But the nice thing is you can drill down by property, you can drill down by date, you can drill down by business entity. So you can take a look at P&Ls, right? September just ended. You can look at each property per month, or maybe Q3 just ended. So you can look at it by quarter. So definitely some great features there on Inago. And continuing that is tenant communication, right? As I said earlier, Zelle, Venmo, not a great place to communicate with your tenant. So Inago gives you a way to do in-app messaging through the mobile app, where you can comment back and forth with a specific tenant, or you can do it as a property as a whole, or even an apartment building as a whole, if you'd like. Like, hey, we're having a pool party today. We're in Cincinnati right now. It's 86 degrees today. Global warming obviously is happening, and you can send out that message to your tenants, in a few clicks of a button. So tenant communication is there. Maintenance management, that's a feature that we started with 6 years ago that I think is still a great feature, because not only with maintenance, I get a lot of people that want to text me back and forth, and I'm like, hey, just open up a maintenance request in Inago. And the reason being is because now there's a paper trail, right? There's a way that the communication is tracked in Inago. It's never going to leave. All my maintenance requests, even from 5 years ago, are still in Inago. And then also your tenants can grant you access to the premises, or your maintenance staff access to the premises. So you get rid of that step of that back and forth of trying to figure out a time when your maintenance staff can come in, or the HVAC person can come in. Digital document signing we went through already there. And then rental advertising. So with Inago, you can advertise on Zillow, RealPage, Zumper, and a few other websites as well. So it takes about 24 to 48 hours, and then your listings become live in Inago and can get prospective tenants. Multiple user management. So we did talk about your maintenance staff earlier. Dave and I talked about having a CPA and things like that. You can add all these people to Inago. You can add your whole team. And the nice thing is, with your apartment, let's say that you have one team in Cincinnati, and then for us, another team in Columbus. You can just give your Cincinnati team just access to your Cincinnati properties. So definitely a great feature to take advantage of. Renters insurance. So that's something that we offer totally for free on your side. It's about $5 to $15 per month, charged directly to the tenant. I always require my tenants to have renters insurance, because I don't want to be responsible if something does happen. So you can even choose the amount of liability coverage that they must have. So definitely something to think about when you're looking at software. And last but not least, responsive support, right? So I've used Venmo for longer than I've worked at Inago, and I've never seen a phone number at Venmo, okay? One time I sent money when I was supposed to receive money, there was no phone number to call. And this was a couple months ago, all right? I want to bet gambling. I know a lot of people are in fantasy football, but instead of, I would try to request money to a buddy, instead I sent it. Well, he was kind of being snarky, and he was like, well, I'm not sending this back to you. So I tried to open up something with Venmo, and there was just no one to call. The nice thing about Inago is you do get a direct phone number. You do get access to our customer service team. They're US based, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and that's Eastern and Pacific time. So 8 o'clock even on East Coast, and then 5 o'clock on the West Coast. So take advantage of that, because there's a lot of softwares out there, and there's a lot of now software as a service like Venmo or Zelle but there's no phone number to call. So when you do have a question, when something does come up, or even if your tenant needs help making an online payment, we do have a responsive support team. So we've kind of danced around, Inago all day, but one thing we haven't showed you is pricing. You're probably thinking, okay, this all sounds good, but how much does it cost? So our pricing is going to be totally different than probably a lot of softwares that you've looked at in the past, or maybe even the software that you're using right now. But we are totally free to use on your end. And how we make money, how we monetize this is we charge your tenants for online payments, tenant screening, and renters insurance. The costs are right there. Very simple, very easy to use, and it is at no cost to you. I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and he's going to talk a little bit about reviews.
Yeah, and I just want to add a couple of things. First of all, I think slight slip of the tongue here. Realtor is one of our syndication partners, not RealPage. Just want to clarify for everybody. You probably
Sorry about that.
guessed that, but no worries. And then, the pricing, you can choose to take on some of those fees. Most landlords, the vast majority, pass those fees on to their tenants. And we find that tenants are very understanding. We believe in distributing the cost of Inago across everybody at a very small rate rather than price gouging, a few of our users for what we have. So anyway, reviews. I talked a little bit before about this. Reviews, you really want to look at sites that are validating the reviews. You can find lots of websites online where Inago's got, 5 stars, right? But they're not necessarily validated reviews. But you want to go find the places that are ensuring that the people leaving reviews are actual real users of that software. And 3 that we are very aware of are Capterra, G2, and Trustpilot. Those are very popular ones. So we really encourage you to go and read reviews on those sites. Pay attention to how many reviews are there, what the overall reviews are. Read some good ones, read some bad ones, read some in between ones. See if the company responded, and if so, what did they talk about? See people talking about the features that you care about, right? If everyone's leaving reviews and they're saying, well, this maintenance thing, it's okay, but the rest of the features are incredible and you don't care about maintenance, well, that might be the software for you, right? Even if it's not quite at the same review level as some others. So just pay attention to reviews. Inago has great reviews. I think we're just about the best reviewed software out there, which we're very proud of. We worked very hard for, but we whatever you choose to do with software, we encourage you to go look at some reviews and some trusted reviews to make those decisions.
Absolutely. And we are going to open up for Q&A. I know we have about 7 minutes left, but we're going to do our last poll question first.
Yeah, and we'll hit on all the questions that are showing up in the chat and in the Q&A there.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. That was a lot of info, very efficient. And now asking if you all want a free consultation. Like they said, one of the great things about Inago is that they do have real people that you can talk to. So that might be the best move for you if you want to explore a little bit more about how some of these features might benefit you specifically. In the meantime, I'm going to leave that up and start looking at some questions that we have. Looks like a lot of you are putting questions in the chat. If you could put your questions in the Q&A box instead, that would be helpful so that we can keep a little bit better track of them. And I'll go ahead and keep the poll up, or do you want me to pause it and have you guys continue on with the rest of the presentation?
Sure, we could leave
Yeah.
it up and we can
Leave
start
it up.
answering those
Yep.
questions, Tom.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep, for sure.
Great. So Byron is asking, is there a way to link my website to Inago so my prospective tenants can apply to occupy my rentals?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a couple of different things you can do. We give you a dedicated application link for your application that you created in Inago. So you can just add that as a link. Like if you have a button on your website, boom, click the button, takes them right there. You can similarly do that with many listings within Inago and creating a resident portal. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. We're happy to talk to you about that on a more specific basis if you are interested in making that jump.
Great. Is there a minimum number of doors that you need to use Inago?
No, absolutely not. Our smallest landlord has 1 unit, and our largest has over 4,000. So definitely, if you're someone who is just a new landlord and you just got your first property, we're a great software to have. If you're someone that's growing and you're worried, like, oh, I see some softwares out there that maybe they cap out at 100 units, 200 units. It's nice to know that Inago will grow with you. So 4,000 is just our biggest landlord right now, but hopefully in the next couple of years we'll have someone even larger.
Yeah, I love that flexibility you all have. Also, Larissa asking, what is the time lag for electronically processed payments in Inago?
Yeah, I can take this one, Thunder. So the first time a tenant makes a payment through Inago, we hold the funds for 3 business days, which is a standard ACH processing time. Once that tenant has completed a successful payment, anytime they use that same payment method, we hold the funds for just a single business day. So we accelerate after that first payment. So your first month with Inago is going to be pretty standard ACH, just like any other payment system would give you. But after that, we do that accelerated timeline, and you're getting them after just 1 business day hold. So it's really quite quick.
Nice. Yeah, very fast. Nataya asking, how long has your company been established for?
So we started in January of 2017, but we started out as a college listing site in 2014. So we've been around for almost. Dave as a company. They've started 2 companies, but this is the one that worked. But we've been in real estate for almost a decade. Inago has been around since January 2017.
Great. Atma asking, my tenants pay cash. How will it work with the software?
Yeah, you can record cash payments in Inago, check payments in Inago. Even if you're getting Venmo, Zelle, PayPal payments, you can record them in Inago. It's no problem at all. We want to work with however you work ultimately.
Yeah, especially if you have multiple ways that your tenants are paying you. It's nice to have one place where you could see all that revenue coming in and record it.
Exactly.
Yeah, Larissa also asking, who is your payment processor?
I can take this one, Thunder. So we work with a few different processors on the back end. This distributes risk, right? Reduces risk for us. There's also advantages that different processors have in different places. So we actually work with a wide variety. You can check our terms and we list a bunch of them, but like Dwala is a big one, Checkbook is a big one,
Yeah.
Authorize.net is a big one. There's a whole bunch back there.
Yeah, those are all reputable payment processors. So that's great. Deanna asking, so is this only for landlords, not property managers?
No, it's for both. So as I was saying, when you can add multiple users, we have thousands of property managers that use the software as well. A lot of the examples we used today was from a landlord perspective because Dave and I are landlords as well. So we're given, just our personal stories, but we have thousands of our property managers that are on the software.
Great. Yeah. And Priscilla was asking if you could put the prices up again, and also where is it on your site? Great. Yeah. So we'll keep that up for you, Priscilla, so you can just take a look, but it is on your site, right? I think you guys have a pricing page. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's right
free.
in the
And then
middle area.
the
Yeah.
fees for the tenants on the right side. So you can take a look there. Also, with cash payments, what is the security procedure to prevent receiving counterfeit bills? That's one I haven't actually had a lot
That's
of research into.
that's a
I,
great question.
it is a really good
I know
question. I know people hold it up and they pretend like they're looking at
Yeah.
something. I don't know what it is though.
Yeah, I think in rush hour it
So
burns purple
Yeah.
maybe. So
yeah, yeah, I wouldn't burn any bills, but so my dad actually owns convenience stores. So
Okay.
definitely I grew up in a business where yes, the number one thing is to hold it up. And now there's a lot of I there's a lot of ways that you can tell it's a real bill, and you can look that up online. Another thing you can do is buy a marker to check for counterfeit. So usually and it depends on the marker, but obviously look it up on Amazon or somewhere like that, and you can mark the bill and it will usually show a different color if the bill is counterfeit.
yeah, it's another reason, to stop accepting cash, but certainly good tips for how to handle that when it does come up.
Yeah. I mean, if it's digital, I suppose that's verified already, right? So,
Right.
okay. Let's see here. When tenants pay on your website, are the rent payments set to go to each of the individual owners? As a broker, I do not want to deal with a trust account.
Yeah, you can do that in Inago. You can add multiple taxable entities, which can be all the individual owners. You can add multiple bank accounts under individual taxable entities if you need to. There's lots of different ways to handle that situation, and all pretty intuitively within Inago.
Great. Sean also asking, are we required to use your background checks? I do the backgrounds myself. Can I do the backgrounds myself or use a third party?
Yeah, absolutely. The nice thing is we partner with TransUnion, so they're usually up with all state regulations compared to using different third parties. So that's why we use TransUnion. But you're definitely free to do it yourself or use another third party.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I know AOA has an offering too, and you could definitely
yeah.
use it and then bring the tenant into Inago. That's no problem at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's nice about your software too, is like you don't have to commit to using every single feature, right? Like if there's one
Mhm.
thing that you want to use, like collecting rent online, and that's the only thing you want to use, it's not like you're paying for something, right? It's free. So it's not like you're missing out because you're paying for something you're not using, you know. I think that's one of the benefits of it is you can kind of pick and choose. And I think over time you'll probably end up using more and more features as you get used to it because there's so many good ones. So yeah, let's see if we have any others that have come in. Mitra was asking about rent control earlier on in the presentation. You brought it up and asking if it's calculated on a percentage base. I can answer that one. It really is, you know, dependent on the rent control law in your specific area. Typically, it is a percentage of you know, rent that you can go up, or it's based on the consumer price index and inflation. Usually use that as a base plus a percentage of the rent on top of that. So it kind of depends on where you are. If you do have questions about the rent control laws in your area, I would highly suggest talking to an attorney, especially if you're in a very tenant friendly area before you raise the rent, just to make sure you're allowed to. Also, sometimes they'll limit how many times in a year you can raise the rent. So sometimes if they're on month to month, technically in some states you could, you know, always increase it every time the month to month gets renewed. But if it's under rent control, it might not matter if it's month to month, and you may have to still wait a year or half a year to do that rent increase. So it really is just a big, it depends. So definitely check in with your attorney on that one. And then Priscilla asking, let's see. Oh, I think we already answered this one, which is how many days will it take to process the rent to us? So you said it could be as fast as one business day, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Sean says, I'm a broker. I do property management and sales. I use QuickBooks. Is there an export feature I can use with QuickBooks?
So we actually
Yep.
integrate directly with QuickBooks Online,
Nice.
and then you can certainly export any data from Inago and import it into QuickBooks if you use QuickBooks Desktop. It's not possible for us to integrate directly with QuickBooks Desktop because it doesn't have an online component. We can't write to it from a technical standpoint, but you can certainly import the data into QuickBooks Desktop, and we've certainly plenty of landlords to do that.
Nice. Okay, let's see if I have any others here that I may have missed. Does the tenant pay the ACH and electronic check fees? Or are there any fees to the owner?
Nope. Everything is passed on as far as the electronic fees to the tenant. In settings, billing settings, you can always take on the ACH and or credit card fee if you'd like, but everything is charged to the tenant.
Great. And I think that kind of wraps up most of the questions. See, is data privacy in place? That's from Ram Vasudevan. Just
Yeah,
wrote in.
yeah, we absolutely take data privacy incredibly seriously. We use bank level encryption on any required data within Inago. We have a really robust privacy policy as well. We're GDPR, CCPA compliant. So, you know, we definitely take data privacy really seriously. We do not, a lot of people think, oh, you're free, you must be selling the data. We don't sell the data. We have zero interest in selling the data. So we are not selling your data to third parties. You're not going to suddenly start getting texts and phone calls after you sign up for Inago. You know, people trying to sell you on insurance or something. But we have pretty robust data privacy practices.
Nice. Okay. And Byron asking about a different software. Can Quicken be used inside Inago?
Yeah, so Quicken, we don't have an integration with Quicken, just with QuickBooks. I don't know a ton of landlords that use Quicken with Inago,
Yeah.
so it may be very simple to export and import the data in. I mean, they're both built by Intuit, so I would imagine if you can do it with QuickBooks, you could probably do it with Quicken, but I don't know that for a fact. But almost any data within Inago is exportable, so I would imagine with maybe a little light massaging, you can get it into Quicken as long as they support import features.
Great. Ted also asking, what are the approximate premiums, the percentage of monthly or yearly rent for rent default insurance? I think that depends on the insurance provider, right?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
I've seen it be based on a percentage. I've also seen it as a flat fee.
Mhm.
And it kind of depends. So they may give you like a per unit flat fee or a percentage. And it just depends on which one you're using and also how much coverage you want, right? So always with insurance, coverage is a factor. So more coverage, more expensive. So I think it really, you just kind of have to shop around to find out what that might be. And if it is too high or it doesn't make sense, then, maybe you're better off without it. But in some cases, it can be pretty low cost. It also sometimes can be based even on your zip code or, the applicant's credit history as well and their risk profile. So really, there's a lot of factors, and every company is going to use maybe different ones. Has that been your experience as well, Dave, Tanvir?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Also, is there an option to pay the ACH fees instead of having the tenant pay?
Yep. So
Yep,
in
you can choose
settings
to
and
do that.
billing settings, yep.
Great. And let's see, Ram is asking, what are the chances the free to client policy changes and then it becomes a subscription based usage per property?
Mhm.
Ooh, that would
We
be
are not.
inconvenient, he says.
Yes, we are not a bait and switch model. I promise you that. No, we again, our mentality, our approach to the market is to create really great software that as many landlords as possible want to use, and to distribute the cost across many, many, many different people, so that we can still, make a great living selling great software, but it doesn't cost really anything for you as a landlord, and a very, very nominal fee for your tenant. So our business model is set. We're growing in a great way. We're not prepping for some switch that will flip and suddenly charge everybody hundreds of dollars a month. That is not our intention whatsoever.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
and
Dave would
that's
give
great.
me a cleaning basket first before he started charging landlords.
That
Yeah,
is very true.
I mean, honestly, like it's so great that you have such a great source that's free. I mean, it's similar like AAOA, it's free to join our association. We find that, there are good things that can be free. And
Yeah.
also, if you have your tenants involved, Inago does, profit from that. So that's what they're using as their revenue source. Because I get that question a lot, like what's the catch? How are they making money? It's there, and it really does happen over time as you start to use their features. But yeah, I think there's a couple questions left in here that are a little off topic, but I can certainly answer them offline. One is about collecting rent that was missed during COVID. So that's definitely a legal question, and also about pets and service animals. So I'll answer those offline for you all in the interest of time here. And we'll look at the next screen. You guys have an offer for our webinar attendees.
Yep. So if you go in the right-hand corner to inago.com/AAOA webinar, if you sign up and start using us, we'll give you a $25 Amazon gift card. Our contact here is at the bottom of the slide as well. So feel free to reach out to Dave or I if you do have any follow-up questions or want to have a discussion. I know we did ask if you would like a free consultation, so we'll start contacting those people tomorrow and get those set up this week.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to put the website in the chat there because it's a link. So everyone go to your
Mhm.
chat, click the link that I just put in there. I'm also going to send you this link in an email tomorrow with the recording and the slides in case you don't catch it. But I mean, you're literally getting paid to try something for free. So I would definitely take advantage of that offer. It's very special of you all to give that offer to our members. So seriously appreciate that, plus the consult. So I'll be sending that list of consult requests to you after the webinar, of course. And if you did opt in for that, you'll get a quick email from Inago's team. Also, love that you put your contact info there. I'll add that to the webinar email follow-up tomorrow. And I think that'll be a great way for you also to answer if you think of more questions to ask our speakers today. And then also, as you leave, please take the exit survey. There are a few questions in there that I'd love to get your feedback on. So yeah, thank you for coming, and thank you so much, Dave and Tanvir, as always. Great presentation, and hope to see you soon.
All
Thanks,
right, thank
Alexandra.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, everyone, take care. Bye.